5x5 all cars here. Soundboard's warmed up. We're good to go. Good, good, good. Okay. Okay, everybody quiet on the set. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the Meat and Potato Show.
Willie, you don't have to worry anymore. Those Russian guys won't be back.
Those guys are bad mothers, Elwood. Serious shit. They kill people.
They kill people?
Listen, Willie, you gotta understand. Those goons are orphan remnants of the post-perestroika Soviet secret police apparatus, which until 1991 carried out its twisted interpretation of the original well-intentioned Marxist-Leninist doctrine vis-a-vis state security, which was massively corrupted by Lavrenta Beria in the 30s. Of course, once a mass populace is coerced into such behavior, as a permanent condition, a radical didactic dialectic shift, such as Glasnost, produces guys like these, stunned headless automata whose only alternative in their new lives is the continuation of brutish measures to which their genetic code has been programmed since the fall of the Romanovs.
It's great. Feel much better.
Good morning, America, and welcome once again to the hardest working show on social media and the internet today, the Meat and Potato Show. Conservative talk and awesome rock, broadcasting on the Golden Lights Radio Network, WNLMradio.com. Here in our ambush studios, right here in good old Worcester, Massachusetts. Our guest this morning, former Republican senatorial candidate, Colonel Reasor calls in and weighs in on the French massacre that occurred just before the weekend. We will be talking about that, reading from the diatribe tonight, as well as great music and comedy, as usual, here on the show. So, sit back, relax. Be sure your seat backs and tray tables are in the upright position. Helmets and safety glasses are required. And if the content of the show offends you, there's some quarters. Call somebody who cares, because we are a no apologies radio show, the Meat and Potato Show, conservative talk and awesome rock on WNLMradio.com. Okay, folks, here we go. As Shakespeare once said, once more unto the breach. And it seems that before this weekend, quite literally those words ring true. Because here we go again. Here we go again. And it never seems to end. And my good friend Colonel Reasor is waiting on the wings here to chime in on this, and we will get to him in a moment. But as is the tradition here on the Meat and Potato Show, it is the top of the hour. And it is time for the diatribe, and I can't wait to hear what the Colonel has to say about this. And you can find all of my diatribes in my blog, the lexingtongreen.blogspot.com, the lexingtongreen.blogspot.com. You can actually start finding more of them in my notes page on my Facebook page, Christopher Mader, not in the Meat and Potatoes Facebook page, but on my Christopher Mader Facebook page. Facebook has a great section called Notes, and they've got a great medium now. They switched it around a bit, and it allows a great format to write some articles, so you can go in there and see everything that I've been writing before, writing recently, and this piece that I'm about to read right now. The Art of the Islamic Wars. You know, the question begs, at what point in time do we begin to actually prosecute this war? We draw a line in the sand and they advance. We draw another line in the sand and they advance again. We accept those fleeing the rat holes they come from, and then they demand that we adopt laws turning our own land into the very rat holes they fled from. Countless times we have heard about how Islam will create a caliphate either by open jihad or what is now called civil jihad. The first is what we see every day: bombings, assaults, beheadings, open warfare. The second, though, far more sinister. It accomplishes this task via slow multiculturalism, demanding exclusion zones, demanding special treatment, demanding special rights under our fucked up political correctness methodology. And yes, I use those words because it is that bad. As we can see with other various groups, it never really ends with equality or parity. We spoke about that last time on Friday morning show. It only ends with total and complete power. And like Islam, liberalism takes a page straight from the playbook, and vice versa. Both are hell-bent on the destruction of our republic, Judeo-Christian values, American exceptionalism, and freedom itself. So the question begs once again, at what point in time do we begin to prosecute this war? Our enemies are using the very tactics of complacency against us. They use the tactics of welfarism, absorption, even our freedom to come and go as we please. And I'm certainly not advocating that we restrict any more than we already are, our freedom to come and go as we please. However, we are seeing attempts to disarm the population. And I cannot help but think how many lives could have been saved at that rock concert if there were just people there legally armed. How many times in the movie theaters, even in our schools, even on our college campuses, how many times could that thing could have stopped? Yes, some people would have been shot, 1 or 2, but not 5, 6, 12, 20. Because somebody would have pulled out a gun and popped that mother right in the head. Done. Then call the police. But everywhere we turn, there is a purposeful attempt to disarm us all while the maniacs run rampant. And I take the example of Israel and Switzerland, 2 countries where the citizens walk around openly with weapons at the ready. One nation, Israel, they're on the front lines of terror. And the other, Switzerland, has pretty much lived in peace for most of its existence. I'll spit that out in a second. And why am I mentioning this? I am mentioning this because you don't screw around with well-armed societies. Our enemies look for those unarmed societies. They look for the soft targets, the gun-free zones. From the crazy college shooters on SSRI drugs to the crazy jihadists, we open ourselves to our own destruction from the very laws we create to prevent our own destruction. We also open ourselves by trying to assuage our enemies, and Islam hates that. When you start negotiating, they see you as weak, and they know that they are winning. We try to bring in these refugees in the hopes of saving them, yet we fail to demand that, under such a plan, they assimilate into our Western values. We don't even vet them. And how are we going to vet them? What, are we going to call up Damascus and ask for the records of these people from the bombed-out Hall of Records? Are we going to call up Baghdad and ask them from their corrupt officials to send us all the documents on these people? Yemen? All these other countries? You think they keep this stuff? Well, the secret police probably does. But that stuff's burned, gone, buried. We'll never, ever see it, ever, ever. And we have come to save them from death. Please, don't let that life preserver we throw to these people be the anchor that becomes our own drowning. And oddly, liberalism demands we celebrate diversity. Oddly again, just not Western culture, especially Americanism. They seek to destroy any mention of Christianity anywhere while allowing special accommodation for Islam so we don't offend them. The West expends blood and treasure defending itself, then has to apologize for doing so. Meanwhile, we wait the next attack and we question what more could we have done to prevent it. It truly is an art form, these Islamic wars, and that is the diatribe. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the show my great guest, former Republican senatorial candidate from Texas, and proving once again that meat and potatoes is nationwide, Colonel Reasor. Colonel, welcome once again back to the show. How are you, sir?
Wonderful. Christopher, first, my congratulations on your show. Gaining in popularity, starting to move out into live broadcast areas and rebroadcast, and also starting to penetrate some of the voices there in Boston. So it's interesting. The truth will out, as the British say. We just got to keep repeating it often enough.
That's true. I mean, the rest of everybody else is getting away with telling the lies, and you and I have been through enough political history, both physically living through it and just studying it, that yeah, you tell a lie enough times, and eventually it just becomes the truth. So why not just start telling the truth? Hopefully that will catch fire as well. But sir, I want to get into this thing. And I told you off the microphone that you were the first person I said when I was looking through my list that it's like, I got to get somebody on who's been over there, who knows what's going on, who knows how to deal with this type of asymmetrical enemy. So the question begs, sir, and it's the very first one, at what point in time do we actually begin to prosecute this war? Go ahead, sir.
Well, I think the war has already been declared upon us. We're the ones living in the vacuum of not knowing so. And you summarized very eloquently, right, in your diatribe right off the bat. The 4 stages, infiltration, then we're going to consolidate some power in the nation we're in. Then we're going to start to dominate the leadership and culture, and then we're going to declare a theocracy. So you're right on the money. These are things that is in Islam, and also part of Islam is the ability to deceive your enemy, actually verbally and written, and so make false statements and deceive to the point where you can prosecute the ultimate goal. So we have to look at, when people say not all Muslims are radical Muslims, well, you're right, it's a small percentage. That happens to be 30%. So when you're talking about, a few billion Muslims in 30%, you're talking roughly 380 million people that want to destroy Muslim civilization.
Sure. Yeah, let me stop you there because there's a great piece from the Prager Institute and Ben Shapiro, who works with what's the guy's name from the Firewall, and there's a piece that's that I play often on the show about that so-called myth of it's just a minority of the Muslims. And the Colonel just hit the nail on the head also. Well, you know what? Okay, if you take these countries and you dissect their population, there's tons of Pew Research, tons of independent polls that go out, and they quite literally, like they do in our country and other countries, they quite literally ask the man on the street if they believe in Sharia law, they believe in, that the West should be brought down. They ask very, generalized questions geared towards eliciting a specific answer from the average Muslim on the street. And the Colonel just said it. Yeah, it might only be 30%, but you're talking how many Muslims are in the world? What, a billion and a half? 30% of 1.5 billion? That's a pretty big damn number, isn't it, sir?
Yes, sir, it is. Yes, sir, it is. And they go, well, immigrants don't cause violence. Well, I think the Charshnef brothers were Chechen conflict Islamic refugees. So you go back to how can you vet someone who's going to intentionally lie to your face? And at that particular point, how are you going to divest back to the point where you can say this gentleman is going to be peaceful now in his future? Or is he doing what you talked about earlier? Hey, I'm just part of the infiltration process wave. It is odd looking at the refugees that there are no women and children, but mostly military. In fact, all of them are military-aged men. Are the women probably left behind, oftentimes in families and homes, and then probably denied the ability to leave with their children? Of course. But there's also a lot of women and children in the streets that aren't being allowed to leave, especially Christians.
Yeah.
And our own State Department said if you are a Christian from that area, you cannot come, period. Now that they can, because what they do is they just ask, are you a Christian? Yes. Sorry, you can't come. And, even if if you ask a Muslim, he's going to lie, the Christian isn't. So it's an interesting, it's an interesting point about it when, how can you vet people that you can't? And the FBI director says we can't vet these people. So there's a really, really telling statement at the G20 summit in Turkey where Obama said, I think it was yesterday, and I'm going to quote him on this, what I am not interested in doing is posing or pursuing some notion of American leadership or America winning.
Jesus Christ, what, seriously?
That's what he said yesterday, quote. So, when he's standing up, and I was actually one of the CNN reporters kind of grilled him on it, and it was exactly your question, when are we going to prosecute it? And the point, part of this is kind of confusing to me is it's obvious that they declared it on us. Now, how to do it is not difficult. How to do it is pretty simple. What you do is you go to the Special Operations Command and you ask the operators, what do you need to win? And then you just listen. I need these laser pointers, I need this communication, helicopters move where I needed to, and I need JDAMs overhead 24/7 for the next 8 weeks, and I can finish it. All you have to do is ask the operators what they need to win. Then you need to give them the resources, the rules of engagement, the authority to make decisions at the local level and get out of the way. That's all you need to do. And that's kind of how Putin leads the show. Putin is a military man. I mean, he understands military doctrine and plan. So what he said was, here's the overall objectives, and then he said, here's the rules of engagement. Don't hit civilian people. Don't blow up,
Right, right.
No chemical or biological release. That remains with me. But you guys get it done, and you get to. So it's not hard. It's a matter of all the president saying he's not interested in winning.
Certainly.
That's the matter. He just said it.
And it does, I'll tell you, we've been watching the former Soviet Union, the Russian Air Force. They're pounding the hell out of these people. They don't care. Colonel, you've studied enough political history, especially the old Cold War East and West conflicts. Yeah, when it comes to a bombing campaign, Russians don't care. They don't care. In fact, I've been watching some YouTube clips, and you can go on the military.com channel, and I don't know if it's stuff they steal or maybe the Russians are just saying, yeah, go watch this footage from our gun cameras. They don't care. We see it. They're dropping bombs on the mosques. They're dropping bombs in the city streets. They're dropping these bombs practically everywhere. Israel, they, as good as they are, they somewhat fight the war with a hand tied behind their back. There have been countless attempts to take out various key leaders, and quite literally, the pilot's got his finger on the trigger, he's ready to go, and then at the last second, he takes his finger off. Why? Because a school bus drives by. I mean, they could have taken out the terrorist leader. He's in the Mercedes-Benz. He's pulling up to the building he's going to go into, but then a school bus drives by. And, oh, sorry, we missed that leader. The Russians don't care. Trust me, that J-Dam is already on its way. Trust me.
No doubt about it. And the other part of that is you look back and go, Russia and France are bombing fixed stationary encampments of command structures that have been there for 2 years now. We're the ones that are giving them some of the intelligence on where these encampments are. My question is, why aren't we bombing them? And I'm going to add my voice to several military pilots who, by law, are not able to come out and talk about what they did. But again, Vladimir Putin's right on the money. We are not bombing them back in the Ice Age. We're there as a president to say, what do you want me to do? I'm doing it. But I think the president showed something really amazing that Felix said, I'm not interested in the notion of American leadership, American winning. And that comes back to me again and goes, amazingly, when we fought Iraq the first time, and there were tons of UN resolutions, tons of, yes, you can go to this line, you can blow them, you can get them out of Kuwait, you can now persecute the war within the weapons of mass destruction. By the way, all you liberals, we've now found them, so you need to get over yourselves, and that second war wasn't valid. Of course it was. They did find the sarin gas, and it happens to be in Syria now. But,
Yeah, exactly right. Seriously.
But the thing that amazes me is and Vladimir Putin called out again, we need to get the United Nations out of the United States. Of course, many people in the United States say we agree. But the point, because the United Nations hell-bent on world domination and control at this point, but the thing that amazes me is there hasn't been a single United Nations resolution against the Islamic State.
Huh.
And
That's true.
There's no ISIS or ISIL, Muslim Levant, which is just a slap to Israel. But, not a single United Nations authorization of force, not a United Nations sanction agreement, nothing. So when you look at that, you go, perhaps the United Nations has been now answering to our president saying, keep your mouth shut, we will support the Muslim communities. And so you have Saudi Arabia, now the leader of the committee in the United Nations for human rights. So you kind of go, are we, America, trying to lead the world into the tolerance of the Islamic Caliphate? And looking at, you saw some of the testimony today, Gomer today, the crew just absolutely stomping onto our Department of Homeland Security. Do you know that this person in Homeland Security in your own department is a Muslim Brotherhood executive? No, I didn't know that. Did you know? And he went down the list. I mean, I don't think Gomer's the most well-spoken person, but boy, I like he's got some courage.
Sure.
He goes right down the list of 6 people in the Obama administration that are straight-out immigrant, right here, Muslim Brotherhood guys. And so it still also stuns me. Why does the left tolerate it? I think you mentioned that in your diatribe also. And I'd like to answer that, why I think I've come to this conclusion.
Go ahead.
That the left hates you so much. They hate us so much. They hate America. They hate Christianity so much. They're willing to risk self-subjugation so that you can be subjugated too.
Exactly right. Here's the other thing too. Let's jump in a time machine and go into the future, a possible horrific future. There is an Islamic caliphate. It's here in America. What does that mean for the socialists, the lefty liberals, who are hell-bent in taking over America, destroying everything America, for their own gain in power? What does that mean when all of a sudden they wake up one day and there's some imam knocking on their door, dragging out the gays and the lesbians and, the feminists out and beheading them in the street? What happens then?
I think they're just so happy that they kill you and me, that they're going to hate America and bring us down, that they actually believe that that is going to be successful and it's not going to affect them. I don't really think these folks have found truth. I really don't think they believe. When you hear the guy up at Mizzou University, the lady, the vice president of the student council screaming, "I'm so tired of the First Amendment." Oh, ma'am. Let's send you to a place. I'd like to send you just a place in Poland. And I'd like you to talk to some people who remember what it was like when they didn't have one.
Well, sir, it's all about tolerance and understanding. Remember that. So don't be getting down on those people at that race protest. It's all about tolerance and understanding, Colonel.
I think it's all about tolerance and understanding as long as it hurts white men
Yeah.
and Christianity.
Right,
and
sure.
That's the tolerance and understanding of it.
And as I wrote in an earlier diatribe, I titled it "The Oxymoronism of Liberalism." I mean, it is. It's a total oxymoron.
Yeah, I mean, if we have a caliphate here, you will not have any rights. None. You're not going to be able to get out and even say, "I don't like what you're doing," because you're going to get beheaded right there.
Exactly.
So, they don't. I don't think they understand totalitarianism to the point where I don't even think they read the stories of what Nazi Germany did and how they, I don't really agree with what you're doing. Well, all right, let me come and interview you for the next 4 years in my jail cell, and let me have a check on your daughter's check. The freedoms we have are so precious. And the Founding Fathers, I love that when someone says it's an old and outdated document. And I got an argument with a guy at a dance just the other night, formal dance at a Confederate Air Force. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't say that. Commemorative Air Force dance. To be politically incorrect. Okay, Confederate Air Force. Old guys putting together the clock. Beautiful place. Guy just got an argument and say, old and outdated document. He's getting rid of the whole thing.
No.
Basically, I knew what he was saying. That he wanted to get rid of the Second Amendment. But he was willing to give up the First, the Second, the Third, the Fourth, all of them. I go, so what you're saying is, you don't want to be able to speak. You don't like the free press. You don't like the ability to petition your government. And I just ran down all the provisions that are on the Bill of Rights. Can I stop buying and imprison your daughters and torture them? Is that okay with you then? I believe that there are some liberals that actually are so sold out on getting rid of the Second Amendment that they will jail themselves and allow the torment of their families and spying in their homes. And if you say the wrong word, someone's going to knock on your door and go, "I heard you talking to your refrigerator in a bad voice about me."
Yeah.
These guys really have no idea what
It's funny that you just said that. I heard you talking to your refrigerator bad about me. I often think about the section of the book 1984 when Winston's neighbor, when Winston is arrested and he's thrown into the jail cell, he's sitting next to his neighbor, who he said hello to every morning. And come to find out, the reason why his neighbor is sitting next to him in jail is because his child heard him whispering in his sleep unwords, and he was arrested for thought crime. So it'll get to that point. I mean, we're not arresting people yet in the streets, but we're already at that point. Even suggesting or thinking can land you in hot water. And I want to get to the Mizzou thing in a second. I have one more question, though, and I want you to talk about this concerning this campaign that we're not waging against ISIS. Colonel, you were an Air Force pilot. You will understand the premise I'm drawing here, and then I'll hand it over to you to take it from there. One of the things that we're doing is our pilots constantly return with either all of their ordnance or half of their ordnance, or pretty much most. They're basically not dropping all the bombs. And the colonel knows that you load up the wings, you load up the drop tanks, you're going on a long mission, you make sure you're wearing a couple of diapers because you're going to be up there for 6, 8, 12 hours. maybe longer. But here's the trick. When you're loaded up with all that stuff, one of the things, a lot of people don't know this, the colonel knows this, they don't top up the tanks on the jet fighter. Why? Because if you top up the tanks, that thing ain't getting off the ground. So they take off with like a quarter, an eighth of a tank. They're going to need an air refueler. They're going to get up 15, 20, 30,000 feet, wherever it is. They're going to mid-air refuel. Then they're going to go on to their targets. If they load up the gas tanks, they're never getting off the ground with all the weight of the bombs. Here's the premise I'm trying to describe here. You take off, you fly around for a couple of hours, you meet the air refueler, you refuel. That is one hell of a dangerous maneuver. The colonel will tell you about it. Now you go to your targets. You go to prosecute your targets. There's another 3, 4, 5 hours in the air. Unfortunately, our pilots are told, no, you can't bomb this. They ask for permission, no, you can't drop. They go on to another target. They ask for permission, no. Here's what's going on. When you fly a jet fighter and it's fully loaded, it's not like really flying a jet fighter. You're not driving a Corvette in the air. You're driving a Mack truck. The thing doesn't handle as well. And what's happening? You're over a live theater. They're shooting SAMs at you. They're shooting anti-aircraft at you. You're trying to dodge that. And it ain't that easy in a jet aircraft totally loaded. The trick is to get in, drop all your ordnance, and then boogie out of there. Now that you've dropped all your ordnance, you're a much lighter plane. You can maneuver a lot better. But here's what's happening with our pilots. They're not allowed to do that. So they fly around for 6, 8, 12 hours. The poor guys, the poor women are pissing their pants because they have nowhere to go to the bathroom. Now they've got to fly back through all of that crap, fully loaded. And like I said, it ain't like driving a Corvette, folks. It's like driving a Mack truck. The whole aerodynamics go right out the window when it comes to avoiding AAA, SAMs, and everything else. Now, and I'm going to get to the colonel in a second. Now the pilot has to look at his gas tank and say, crap, now I got to mid-air refuel again in order to get back to the carrier, in order to get back to the base. We're putting our pilots in incredible danger, aren't we, Colonel?
Well, I would say we're exposing them to undue risk if we're not doing the job. If you're going to fly over and do all the actions of going into enemy territory and pushing through, surface-to-air missiles, which usually are completely down because they know we're so good at the ability to detect and destroy them, but it's normally just heavy caliber machine guns.
Right.
But just a couple corrections on that, and I know you're right on the money on some things.
Yeah, no, please correct me where I'm wrong on that, please.
That's all. The urinating in the airplane for men and women is taken care of, so you don't have to.
Oh, okay. Okay. I did not know that.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, we want to have as much gas in our jet all the time. Because, when you go to burn, you're burning about 150,000 pounds a minute, so you can run out of gas in about 7 minutes.
Jeez.
So we do take off heavyweight, but it does make us use afterburner to get off the ground heavyweight. But the problem is coming back heavyweight. And that's where guys on a carrier, coming back, we want to go in, do our bombing run, and we plan to have enough gas to stay in station and fight if we have to, and have a end your fight fuel bug mark that you can leave the fight and make it to the carrier without responding. If you're out away from the carrier or you're out away from your home drone and you don't have enough gas to make it home, now you get pretty tense. Because now the tanker has to come to you, and you've got to try and look, and you get in the tank stack, emergencies declared. That's probably the most tense place we don't want to get.
Right.
But the problem is if you're going out, like an F-16, under certain configurations and loading cannot land with flat ordnance. So they have to go to the dump target and dump it off before they come home.
So we're wasting money.
We're wasting money. And you cannot bring certain weapons back aboard an aircraft carrier armed either. So, once you arm and pull the pins and you take off, you're leaving there. And there's usually a designated dump target. So more than likely what's happening is there's nothing at the primary, there's nothing at the secondary. Let's go over to the dump target, dump our bombs again. Thank you very much. Come home, we land with plenty of fuel, and the next group goes, did you hit anything today? No, we had to go to the dump target again. And that's where Putin is saying you guys should bomb in the desert, because that's probably what's happening. So, and even though we are high altitude and heavyweight, if we do have to engage, we know that we start stripping off gas tanks to make ourselves maneuverable.
that, though. We keep hearing a lot of pundits say, oh, well, the first thing I do is establish a no-fly zone. And because I don't have as much knowledge as you do of military tactics, there is a little ding going on in the back of my head saying, you know, why do I think that's a bad idea?
Well, the first thing is, as soon as you deny the person their airspace, that's a declaration of war. Because their sovereign airspace is theirs. So
Sure.
when you say, I'm going to put a no-fly zone over Syria, you have declared war with Syria. And if you say, I'm going to put a no-fly zone over Syria, Russia has a no-fly zone over Syria. So now you've got, are their rules of engagement compatible with ours?
Sure.
More than likely, they're going to open first long range, because they probably don't have to go through all the crazy matrix we have to do to fire at long range, which means they're going to have quite an advantage. The other note to me is, you know, we send F-15Es to Insulet, the bombing version of the F-15, which is a very long-range interdiction bomber. Its job is to go way deep, self-escort itself in, doesn't need a lot of tanker support. Of course, they always want a tank to have gas, because if you get caught in a fight, the fighter pilots say the things they don't like is gas in the tanker, runway behind them, and altitude above them. So
Right.
that's what we don't want to have.
Right.
So we want to be high, fast, with gas and weapons.
Sure,
And those are good
sure.
things.
Hey, before we move on, one more thing that came on into my head. Russians are there, the French are there now, and of course we, do whatever little we are doing. Is there a possibility of something happening between Russian pilots, American pilots, or just French, British, and anybody else is there? Or is there an honor amongst the pilots that, okay, we understand we're on different sides, but we're here for the same purpose? Or is there a possibility of a little tit for tat going on?
I think there's a possibility for a big accident. If the Obama administration is not talking with the Russian administration and the French administration and sharing information daily about where we are and where we're going to be, there is a potential for some bad stuff to happen.
Sure, right.
Mainly because the Russian equipment is not compatible with our equipment, and our equipment is not compatible with theirs. So as soon as I'm out flying with my American transponders and my American equipment, I don't have a Russian SRO-2 transponder or a SOD-57 on my airplane. So when a Russian looks for friendly forces on their fighters, I'm going to come up as just a blip. And then they have to go through the identification process. Well, maybe this is an enemy aircraft. Well, they've been trained that F-15s are enemy aircraft. So there is a potential for that. And there's the same the other way around. They don't carry our transponders either.
Right.
So we're going to go lack of friendly. Nope, that's not a friendly aircraft. Now we're going to go presence of enemy. Whoa, that's a Su-27.
Right.
Ooh, okay, well, what does that mean? So the potential to get a weapon in the air is really, really intense when you figure that Insulet Air Base is 8 miles from Syria.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You take off, and the departure corridor, the runway at Insulet runs right parallel to the Syrian border. And if you take off going southwest, you do a left turn towards Syria. And we've actually had an F-16 that had an inertial system wander off course, and the guy wandered into Syria. If you remember that about, I think, 6 years ago, F-16 and a Syrian MiG-27, I think it was a MiG-23 got wrapped up. So it can get really intense. My question is that intentional?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you do have to wonder about that, if some of it is intentional and planned to elicit a response. Quite literally to, all right, well, let's see what these guys are doing today. Let's send somebody out there and see what's going on. And I'll tell you, I wouldn't want to be the pilot that's like, what? You want me to do what? I'm not doing that. What do you want, glue? I'm not doing that. Anyway, go ahead, sir.
Here's a simple, quick way we can avoid getting people shot down. If we knew the Russians' rules of engagement and we shared with them our rules of engagements, we could avoid tripping
Sure.
them. For example, let's say that the Russians' rules of engagement are he is not a Russian fighter, he is an enemy fighter, and the guy has locked on to me. That is a hostile intent, I'm going to shoot. Well, all we need to do on our side is don't lock on to him, and then we won't trigger the matrix. But I guarantee you that the 23-year-old wonderful staffers at the White House who are moral superiors and highly more intelligent than us would not even dare to ask the question.
Yeah, I've noticed that about, you do a quick who's who of the Obama administration. They're all young college grads, idealistic. We're going to change the world. They're all steeped and indoctrinated in socialist leftism, and yeah, there's no. I mean, we can talk about. Excuse me. We can talk about, old white guys in the administration. Well, I got news for you. Anytime there are, old white guys, these are people from a few years of experience, lived through the Cold War, probably worked as young staffers in the Kennedy or Johnson administration, or maybe even further back. And so they've seen a few things, and they kind of know what's going on. These young kids today, they don't, and I know I sound like an old man, these young kids today. But it's true. I mean, just Google a list of the Obama administration. I mean, you're talking 20-somethings, you're talking 30-somethings. Very few of them, worked in past administrations or in government themselves. They have lots of degrees in political theory and ideology, but few of them lack actual hands-on experience, and I'll even say even blood on their hands, because you can't work at the highest levels of our government without at some point in time having to deal with stuff like that. And
Right.
I'm sorry, you do. You walk away with some blood on your hands, because there's always going to be some crazy idiot in the world causing problems. So let's move on here. I want to move on to the whole Black Lives Matter, Mizzou, Ferguson, everything else. Great edition of the New American magazine, published by the John Birch Society, talking about the war on the police that's going on in America, which I find interesting because I I save all my old copies of the magazine, and I dug out an issue that was out sometime last year about the militarization of our police force, and I think the Colonel was on sometime last year too. I think we were touching upon that, and it seems the whole thing is flipped. Before, we were worried about the militarization of our police, and now we've got this problem going on with the Black Lives Matter, and now you have people like the Reverend Al Sharptongue talking about nationalizing our police force. Now, in the articles I'm reading in this month's edition of New American, this is nothing new, calling for a nationalization of the police. Elements of Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, Carnegie Organization, and there's all sorts of tons of other groups there. Tides Foundation, George Soros, funding money through all of these nonprofits to incite all of these riots that are going on in Ferguson, in Baltimore, and a lot of these protests that are going on throughout the campus. Colonel, you and I spoke one of our first few interviews. We talked about the personification of evil. Are we seeing this rear its ugly head again?
I think if we were to look at the social economic realities of what's going on in our cities, if you were really to look at it, there are no jobs because the liberals have murdered them. I mean, cities are nodes of industrial commerce, so you're going to murder industry. There's going to be huge unemployment in the cities. We've talked numbers before, 22% on food stamps,
Sure, right, sure.
around 30% in the cities. We get all that. The other part is, well, then you should be educated to be able to get out of it. Great, 73% dropout rate in Detroit when you count 9 through 12. Boston, we talked those numbers before too. And then you go down, well, okay, if you're not going to have education and you're not going to, then you at least be able to own your own business. No, you can't do that either because they're not going to lend money into the impoverished areas. And you look at the Black Lives Matter people and they go, do I have some white superpower that I can rob you of your prosperity, your livelihood, and your
No, they haven't.
Some people are. Some people are starting to get it. It's the Democrats that are keeping them down for a voting bloc.
Right.
That's why they want to open the migration or the immigration gates, because they need another population to keep the thumb down on.
I enjoyed the Fox Business News Republican debate. They finally actually really did talk about economic situations going on in the United States. I don't think they, I can only imagine if you were up on that stage and you give that answer that you just gave me just now, it would have blown people away. But the Democrat debate, I have to quite literally suffer my way through it. Unfortunately, I get, after I've watched about an hour and a half, it's like, all right, this is enough, because it's the same thing. And then, of course, Bernie Sanders, blaming the terrorism thing on global warming. It's like the target is right in front of you. Here's the gun. It's right there. See it? It's right there. There's the target. Shoot it. It's only about 10 feet away. And people like Bernie Sanders and people from the left, it's like they just spin around 3 times and shoot the gun off up their ass, for crying out loud. And it's like they think, oh, see, they said something important. They did something important in that debate. It was a wonderful debate. Are the liberals... all right, let me rephrase. Are the Democrats up on that stage, are they purposely just misleading the American public with their rhetoric and their answers to the questions? And in the background, while at the same time, that they actually really know, yeah, this is really screwed up and our party is really screwed up, but I have to give these answers in order to keep this machine going. Do you understand? I'm having difficulty phrasing the question. Do you understand what I'm trying to ask there?
Yeah, and I think who is the Democrat strategist, the bald man? A very eloquent speaker, kind of a hack, talking about the guy who is always on television talking for the Democrats. He's married to a Republican wife. They have...
Is it Goodell? Goodell worked with Carter, worked in the Clinton.
Yes.
Yeah, James Goodell is his name, yeah. He's kind of a weird-looking guy, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, Delaware guy. He said, I'm a Democrat because it's easy to deceive him.
Oh, I see. No, it's Carville. Carville was right, the bald guy.
I'm a Democrat. I stay a Democrat because they buy my BS and they drink it Oklahoma and Center, and it's easy to gain power with it. And I think you answered your part of your question. If you repeat it often enough, people believe it's true.
Sure.
And I'm a PhD student. I run through every statistical abstract I could of the global warming data. There's nothing there at all of significance anywhere. So I go back to the charts and I recrunch them again, and I go, there's still nothing. I'll give it to my PhD buddies. I go, can you find it? They don't know. Can't find it. Right. Now, what you will find is you'll find the UN Secretary Chair on global environmental issues saying, quote, we have to milk this global warming thing as much as we can for as far as we can to get as much power as we can as soon as we can.
Sure.
So when you hear lines like that coming out, and you hear someone say that the jihadists are there because of global warming, why the left loves global warming is because it gives them everything theologically they want.
Yeah.
And therefore it must be true.
Sure.
It's like evolution and DNA. As soon as the left saw that there were DNA that had random mutations and replication, they said, well, evolution is true, DNA proves it. Instead of going through the whole chain and going, well, there's actually a DNA supervisor that fixes the errors. And then there's an immune system that kills the errors. And if you don't have the immune system kill them, then it turns out to be cancer. So, they just stop wherever it sounds good.
Yeah.
So global warming sounds good because it is the vehicle for destroying our borders, shutting down industry, gaining the control of the United Nations, putting all the resources under the central control of the pinheads in New York, that, again, are our moral superiors and intellectual superiors. They're so vastly better than us that we actually deserve to die because they're so stupid. Now, you really think that's the way to think? Yeah. Kennedy comes out and says these people need to be put in jail for even talking that it's not true.
Sure.
And then you have, General Foreman says we need to lock these people up in FEMA camps.
Right. Yeah, we talked about. Yeah.
Bureau of Land Management cannot carry
Yeah.
guns.
But they
Social
do.
Security cannot carry guns.
But they do.
So
But they do.
They do, but it's illegal for them to do so.
Now, you had mentioned that various people high up in the administration and people from the left openly coming out and basically saying, yeah, I know that what we're talking about is a bunch of crap, but we've got to get people on board and we're going to milk this thing as much as we can. The left doesn't care anymore. Again, I had said this about, the people up on stage, the people running for Democrat president, yeah, they know it's all bullshit, but they keep saying it because that's what the party demands on them. But I think it's morphed even into something even worse than that, is that they don't care anymore. It's no longer, the cat is out of the bag. They don't care that the people know that it's all bullshit because now they've consolidated their power. And so they're just going to come out and say, yeah, we're lying right to your face, but you better do what we tell you, or we're going to slap a fine on you, or we're going to come and arrest you, and we're going to make life difficult for you. And they do. Again, these people, I'm sorry, these people are crazy. They're just completely insane.
I don't think a liberal will ever say the words, I'm lying. I don't think a liberal will ever say the words, you were right. I don't think a liberal will ever say the words, I'm sorry. What they will constantly say behind the closed doors on their own is, we know we're lying, but we can sell it to the Democrats, to the environmental guys that are doing their Gaia worship, Greenpeace, good heavens, the seas are going to rise, you need to say the polar bear. You can never go back to the Democrat and go, see, the Alaska pipeline did not kill the caribou east-west migration.
Sure.
See, they're just going to turn around and walk away from it. They're not going to look at you and go, gosh, you're right. You're right, Christopher. Well, you called me on it. It was my bad. I'll go back and do it. They're not like you and I.
Right.
They'll just look at you and go, you caught me. And they're just going to walk away. And they're going to go, who are you? You don't have enough power to bring me down. I've got 40%. 40% of all the Democrat Party believes it. That's good enough for me. That's 40% of all the Democrat vote. Bingo. That's why I'm winning Rhode Island. That's still.
Yeah. So.
Or Connecticut is Connecticut all total in for Hillary. I just want to strangle you people in Connecticut and go, are you really, truly, totally unaware of the things that this woman has done?
Sure.
It just amazes me that that's, a woman who is going to be in jail for perjury. Let me say, Connecticut, do you know what top secret, specialized, compartmentalized information is? That's nuclear launch codes. That's nuclear detonation codes. That's locations and names of our spies. That's the locations of our subs. That's the radar cross-sections of our F-22s and our F-15s and the radar frequencies are working. This is stuff that she had on an unclassified server.
Sure.
I mean, the woman, I agree with Trump, the woman's running so that she can pardon herself.
We're wide open. We're probably more wide open than any security breach back during the Cold War. We're probably more wide open than those 13 days with Kennedy. We're probably more wide open now than I think ever in the history of the United States. World War II, post-war, the 50s, with the threat of the Red China and the Soviet Union. We're wide open. This is probably why, to a certain degree, that the jihadists, they say, we don't care, we're going to run rampant. Because, the government has given us all your secrets, and we now have the finger on the button.
The compromise of the national security that woman did by having top secret SCI material on her unclassified server, which we know everybody in the world was hacking, is amazing. There were probably plans, spending. What also amazes me, Christopher, this is another thing that just astounds me, is just today, we're talking climate change. The Congress is going to grill the EPA, I think, starting tomorrow on climate change data. They refuse to release NOAA's emails
exactly. But again, I don't think these people in these various bureaucracies that they even care. I mean, look at Lois Lerner. I mean, an absolute total fraud, liar, criminal, a total criminal. She skates away. You know, listen. Everyone talks about how wonderful Trey Gowdy is in his pursuit of the Benghazi. Daryl Issa, who pursued the Fast and Furious thing. Everyone said, well, isn't that wonderful that they did that? Listen, folks, one of the things I noticed, and all I could think of was the 18 minutes of tape. 18 minutes of missing tape brought down an entire presidency. Albeit, much more was contributed to the downfall of Nixon, but it was those 18 minutes that was the smoking gun that brought down the presidency. You have today in our administration actual criminals and liars. And Colonel and I just talked about the liberal and the left, how they'll look you right in the eye and they'll say, yeah, I'm lying. Go ahead. Go F yourself. What are you going to do about it? That's what's happening. So when people talk about Daryl Issa and Trey Gowdy about how wonderful they are, my answer to that is, you know what? I'm sick and tired of hearing Daryl Issa, and I'm sick and tired of hearing Trey Gowdy. If you've got all this information, shit or get off the pot. Hand down the indictments, get this thing over with, even if you lose. That's not the point. It's like a street fight. It's like standing up to, excuse me, Colonel, it's like standing up to the bully. Go, stop backing away, face that bully, even if you lose. Face down that bully, hand down the indictments, shit or get off the pot. I'm sorry, Colonel, go ahead.
No, sir, I just wanted to add to your commentary because I was pretty furious about what you just said, but in total agreement. 7 years. The House can impeach. And all impeachment is firing from your federal job. That's all it is. The House can impeach any federal employee.
Sure.
When the president is impeached, then there's a trial caused by the Senate. So the House just can't remove the president. The House can remove any other federal employee, including the vice president. But the House, when it impeaches the president, then the Senate becomes the jury.
Sure.
Not a single impeachment, not a single indictment, not a single independent prosecutor in 7 years of the most corrupt administration in the history of our nation. And that is why we call you rhinos. Because you can't do your job because you're either bought and paid for, someone threatened you, someone has come down on you and said, hey, if you don't do this, I'm going to kill your kids. And that's how ruthless
That's probably, yeah,
these things are.
that's probably absolutely true. Ladies and gentlemen, the Meat and Potato Show, conservative talk and awesome rock. We are reaching the top of the hour. We got to move on with the rest of the show. My great friend, Colonel Reasor, calling in from Texas, former senatorial candidate, went up against Cornyn in the great state of Texas in 2014. Multi-time guest on the show, and this interview was no different. Fantastic as usual. Colonel, I want to thank you so much, sir. Is there any information you want to give, anything that you're working on right now? Tell my audience about it.
Well, Christopher, we're just trying to do the best we can to do research for the Texas legislature, and Governor Abbott is doing a fantastic job, and we'll have another opportunity to talk with Cornyn in 2020. Blessings on you, and thanks for fighting for liberty, sir.
Colonel, thank you so much, sir. You have a great night, sir. Thank you for coming on the show.
Cheers to you. Bye-bye.
And there we go. Once again, Colonel Reasor calling in from Texas. Let's get on to some other stuff here in the Meat and Potato Show. Conservative Talk and Awesome Rock. We're broadcasting here at our Ambush Studios here in Worcester, Massachusetts. And we are on Northern Lights Radio Network, WNLMradio.com.
If you live in the West and are concerned with Islam and the Islamization of your country, this video